Hey everybody, I hope your weekend went well. We're going to be jumping into 4.6 today. 4.6 is all about writing equations in slope-intercept form. If you understood last week's lesson pretty well, if that stuff came easy to you, this stuff will as well. It's going to be pretty similar in just jumping off of last week's stuff. In fact, a lot of the activities, a lot of the stuff we have planned for you this week is going to look similar to what you did last week. If you didn't understand last week's stuff, I highly recommend you to go back, watch the notes video from last week. Mr. Moore made it, so it's not as high of quality as the stuff I make, obviously, but it's still pretty good. It's good stuff. But go back, do that lesson, do all the work for it. Make sure you understand it really well. Ask me or Mr. Moore if you guys have questions about things. We can help you out, get that stuff done. But yeah, you really do need to understand last week's stuff to understand this week's. So we're going to be using lines, we're going to be using tables, charts, whatever else, points to write equations. Okay, so first thing I want you to remember is y equals mx plus b. This equation. Remember, this is the equation for a line that's in slope-intercept form. If you remember what slope-intercept means, it's your slope, which is m, and your intercept, which is b. It just tells you both of those things pretty quickly and easily. There's a bunch of other forms of a line. They don't really tell you the slope and the intercept without you doing some work on them. They might tell you one or the other, but they're not going to tell you both without you doing some work. Some helpful things they do tell you, but slope-intercept form is going to be the easiest thing for us to use to tell us the slope and intercept. Keep this in your mind, memorize it. Remember, m equals slope. Whatever your m value is your slope, and b is your y-intercept. I highlighted slope red, y-intercept blue. You can do that too if you want, or you can just do it without the colors. I always recommend using the colors because color-coded things are just a lot nicer and easier to work with. So if we're looking at this line right here, I'm going to zoom out a little bit so we can look at the line while we're doing this stuff. Okay, but this line starts at 0, 2 and goes up to 1, 4. Okay, there's 3 steps to find an equation of a line in slope-intercept form. The first step is just to find the slope. Okay, you guys all know how to find slope from a line. Hopefully, if you don't, then definitely go back and review that. Okay, but to find the slope of a line, we use a nice, let's use red because we're using red for slope. What you're going to do is find how much it rises, okay, which in this one will be up 1, 2. Okay, so you're going from this point up 1, 2. So your change in y is 2 divided by your change in x, how much it runs. Okay, so how far over do I have to go? Should go over 1. Okay, so remember, slope is always change in y divided by change in x. Okay, rise over run is another way we say it. So your slope for this one is 2. 2 over 1 is the same as 2. You can just divide it. 2 divided by 1 equals 2. So this means for every time we go over 1, we go up 2. Okay, or every time we go up 2, we go over 1. However you want to say it is fine. The second part we're going to do is we're going to find our y-intercept. Use a nice blue for that because we had blue for b. Okay. Y-intercept of this one is where it hits the y-axis. Remember, the y-axis is the vertical axis. Wherever your line intersects the y-axis, that's your y-intercept. If you think about it, on the y-axis, your x value is always going to be 0 because it's not moving left or right from the origin. It's just staying the same. It's going up or down. Your y value is what changes. So on this one, it intersects the y-axis, intersects the y-axis at 2. Okay. So and we'll put up here, we can put m equals, down here, we use b equals 2. Your slope and your y-intercept are not always going to be the same. In fact, they're most likely not going to be the same. There's only a few instances where they will be. So this is a special occasion where they're the same. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't have any special rules for it or anything like that. It just happens that they're the same. They're both 2. Okay, so we have a slope of 2, a y-intercept of 2. Now we can write our equation. Our equation, y equals mx plus b, We're going to keep the y as a variable. We're going to keep the x as a variable. We're just going to change m and b. And if you look up here, it's nice and color-coded. We put a 2 in for m. We put a 2 in for b. And you have your answer. So your equation is going to be y equals 2x, because we're replacing m with 2, plus b, which is also 2. I replaced m with 2. You could also put 2 over 1 if you want. Sometimes that's a little easier. A lot of stuff like Khan Academy and Big Ideas Math will want your answer completely simplified, which 2 over 1 is simplified to 2. But I don't mind. Check with Mr. Moore and ask a few lines. But I don't mind if you keep it as a fraction. Okay? I think that's a little easier to see sometimes, easier to work with. But 2 over 1 or 2x plus 2 is your answer. All right, we've done it once. Let's try it again. What we're going to do in here is we have 4 examples, 2 with graphs, 1 with a chart or table, and 1 with 2 points. So we'll go through, do all those. I'm going to do this one with you guys, and then I'll ask you to pause the video, try the next one by yourself. If you want to pause the video before this one and try it, go for it. But if you're still a little shaky on it, feel free to watch through, try the next one by yourself. So first thing we're going to do is find the slope, just like last time. On this one, it's a little different. We have a not quite as easy of a slope to find. The slope is negative. It's the first thing I notice. Oops, it goes from left to right. It's going down. So we're just going to count and see how much it's going up and how much it's going over. When I count this, I start here, go up 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 and over 1, 2, 3. Negative 4/3 is as simple as it can get. We can't simplify that any further. So we just leave it as negative 4/3 equals our m value. Okay, it's a terrible m. Let me try again. There we go. Negative 4/3 equals m. You can also start counting from this point up here and go down 1, 2, 3, 4, and over 3. It's the same thing. It does not matter which point you start from, which point you end at. You're just going to go from one point to another. And you should always get the same answer as long as you remember your positive and negative slope. Remember, negative slope is when it's going down from left to right. Like this one, if we start here, we trace the line, we go down. If it went up from left to right, it would be positive, like the example in the front. Next thing we're going to do is find the y-intercept. This one's all nice and easy for us again because the y-intercept is, oops, redo that. The y-intercept for this is given to us. The line intersects. One of the points is actually on the y-axis. So the y-intercept for this is just -1. It intersects the y-axis at -1. So b equals -1. Now what we do is we just take that information and we plug it into our equation. Y equals m, which in this case is -4/3 x. Remember, your y and x stay the same. We just replace m and b. So -4/3 x plus -1. Because we're adding a negative, we could also write it as -1. So either -4/3 x plus -1 or -1. Either way is the same. Remember, adding a negative is the same thing as subtracting a positive. Both are correct. Both should be taken on things like Khan Academy and all that. Neither are more simple as far as simplest terms go and all that, or simplest form, excuse me. So you can write either way, and both of them will be correct. -4/3 x plus -1 or -4/3 x minus 1. This equation tells us our slope, which is -4/3, and it tells us our y-intercept, which is -1. If we go back up here to check it, we count up 1, 2, 3, 4 over 1, 2, 3. Yep, we're correct on the slope. -1 is the y-intercept, where it's intersecting the y-axis right there. So we're correct on that. There's our equation. Pause the video. I want you guys to try this one. This one's a little tricky because it's a horizontal line. So remember your rule for horizontal lines before you go through and do it. How do you find the slope of a horizontal line? Pause it, try it. All right, now that you've tried it, let's go through it together. The slope of this, well, horizontal line, any horizontal line is always going to be 0. As a quick refresher, why? We're not rising any from this point to this point. Okay? Our rise is 0. Our run is 1, 2, 3. 0 over 3, 0 divided by 3 is 0. So our slope for this is 0. Our y-intercept, we find that the exact same way we would find that on any normal line. Again, this one's given to us because there's an actual point on the y-axis. That point is 0, -4. So -4 will be our b value. If it's not a 6, that is a b. So -4 equals b. Okay, I tried to make a little tail on that. That didn't work. That just made it look worse. Okay, but -4 is our b value, or y-intercept. Again, all we do is plug these in. We leave the y and x the same. So y equals 0x plus -4. 0x plus -4. Now that's weird. If you have 0 x's, like what does that mean? I think through it. 0 times anything is 0, right? So no matter what x equals, 0 times x is going to be 0. If x is a billion, 0 times a billion is 0. If x is -1/2, 0 times -1/2 is 0. So 0x just equals 0. So what we can do is we can change this equation. We can simplify this. Y equals 0 plus -4, which is just -4. Y equals -4. Remember, if you ever have an equation that's just a y equals equation, it'll be a horizontal line. If you have an x equals equation, think about what kind of line it is. That's right, it's vertical. I don't know if you got it right or not. I'm just assuming you did. It's a vertical line. Great job. So x equals lines are always vertical, y equals are always horizontal. This is a horizontal, so it's just y equals whatever your y-intercept is. And no matter what x equals, y always equals -4. Okay, let's go up to the top right problem. Let's see if I can ever scroll this over. It's really hard to do sometimes on this computer. Aha, I did it. Second time. Usually it takes me about 5 tries and I have to edit out all the times I try. But this time I got it. All right, so we have a chart here, or a table. You guys, at least in my classes, were really good at finding slope from a table. Okay, so hopefully you guys remember how to do that. If you need help, remind us. But to find slope from a table, what you're going to do is just find the difference in x and the difference in y and put them over each other. So from -1 to 1, it's just +1. You only have to do 1 point. From 3 to 8, it's +5. Okay, you can go through and do all the other ones. From 0 to 1, it's 1. 1 to 2, it's 1. 8 to 13, it's 5. 13 to 18, it's 5. But really, all you need is 2 points. You have 1 point here, -1, 3, and 0, 8 is your other point. Okay. Now all you're going to do is you're going to put your change in y, 5, over your change in x, 1. 5 divided by 1 equals 5, which is our slope, our m value. Remember, you don't have to put in 5 divided by 1. You can, or sorry, you don't have to just put 5. You can put 5 over 1 if you want. It's just a little more simple if you put 5. It's a little easier to read if you put 5 over 1, though, because that means you're going up 5 over 1. It's all preference on that. Your y-intercept is always the y value when x equals 0. So we try to find, does x equal 0 at any of these points? Haha, it does, right there. So our y value when x equals 0 is 8. X equals 0, y equals 8. Remember, if you had a little graph right here, you're graphing this out. You go 0, 8. You have a point right there. -1, 3, something like that. It'd be a little line Looks like that. All right. So we have our m value 5, our b value 8. Now what we're going to do is just plug those into our equation. Y equals m, which is 5 or 5 over 1, times x plus b, which is 8. So y equals 5x plus 8. And that's all you do. Find your slope, find your y-intercept, which is the y value when x equals 0. Plug it in and go. You have your equation. I want you guys to try and pause the video and try this one by yourself. Remember, you have 1 point right here, 1 point right there. If it helps you to plug those into a table, plug them into a table, just like that. If not, find the slope using that formula and find the y-intercept and go for it. If you need the formula, remember m equals y1, y sub 1, excuse me, I already messed that up. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. All right, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Try it yourself, and then unpause the video when you're done. All right, welcome back. Let's go ahead and do this one real quick. First thing you're gonna do is find the slope. You can plug it into this old equation right here. If you do that, we're gonna have y2. It's gonna be our -2. Let's actually go ahead and label these. This will be x1, y1, x2, y2. All right, so your equation. Less thick. There we go. So y2, -2, minus y1, which is -1. We're subtracting a negative there. Divided by x2, 4, minus x1, 0. Okay. When you subtract a negative, it's the same thing as adding a positive. So we have -1, -2 plus 1 is -1, over 4. -1/4 equals m. There we go. Okay, so slope is -1/4. I think this is the first one where you have a fraction as a slope. And that's fine. You can just keep it as -1/4. You never have to turn these into decimals. In fact, they'll want you to keep them as fractions, economy, big ideas, math, all of that kind of stuff, including CMAS and all that, and when you get to high school. So just keep them as fractions. Don't do any extra work. If you get a decimal, convert your decimal back into a fraction. Next thing we're going to do is find the y-intercept. What we can do is look and see if either of these points have x as 0. Does this one have x as 0? No, 4 is not 0. Does this one? It does. So your y value when x is 0 is your y-intercept every time. Okay, so x equals 0, so we have a y-intercept at -1. B is -1. Y-intercept is usually a lot easier to find than slope. You don't have to do this whole formula thing. If you don't have a point at 0, if it gave you 2 points that were not 0 points, you'd have to do a little more work. That's not for this lesson, so don't worry about that right now. Last thing you're going to do is write your equation. Y equals mx plus b. So keep our y and x the same. Y equals -1/4 times x plus -1. Since we're adding a negative, I'm just going to put -1. We're subtracting 1. Let me or Mr. Moore know if you guys have any questions at all. Thanks for watching. For my class, make sure you turn in a picture of your notes onto Google Classroom. For Moore's class, I don't know what he does, but yeah, just do whatever he asks you to do. Have a good week, guys. Let us know if you have questions.